Elizabeth Kramer. Welcome. Again, for people who were not here this morning or for the previous few days, there are translation devices at the back that may assist people in hearing the discussions and hearing the presentations in the language of your choice. Please don't take them home. And please state your names for the record, please, because not everybody's going to
I just wanted to ask, is it normal procedure that a MLA who proposes a bill is not present to hear the standing committee? It's the norm that he would not be here?
My understanding, I'm new to this gig. It is
not the norm to be here.
It is the norm that they are not the member. He's not a member of the committee, so he is not obligated to be here.
Okay.
And I can only relay what past experience has been, and it is not uncommon that the minister presenting the legislation would not be present. It does not mean that he is not listening. This is streamed on the web, and knowing how very detail-oriented Mr. Carty is, I suspect he's absolutely paying attention to every bit of this. He's a very conscientious individual and has put a great deal of effort into this legislation, which he is very passionate about. So go ahead, Mr. Fitch. He's got more experience than I have.
The gallery is open to anyone who wishes to attend.
Yes.
Which includes MLAs and ministers as well.
Yes.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the Standing Committee, my name is Liz Kramer, and I am compelled to come here today and announce my position on this issue, and that is I oppose Bill 39. Before I get started, I'm going to let you know that I have a lot of questions. This is all I have, unanswered questions. Although I do not expect you to answer, because that's not what we're here for, and most of you don't have the answers anyway, I assume. I gave birth to a son late in life. Quite simply the best thing to happen to me, and I'm thankful to God that I was able to deliver a healthy baby. A lot of thought went into how I behaved during pregnancy to make sure my child had the best start possible in life. Things that I was in control of, like eating right and raw as much as possible, taking vitamins, exercising, trying to be happy and not stress. It was late in my pregnancy that I was reading the book entitled What to Expect When You're Expecting, which is government-issued reading for all new parents as given out in most prenatal classes in the province. I read that my baby would need a Hep B shot before I left the hospital with my newborn infant. I started looking at what this injection is, since I was planning to have a birth with as little intervention as possible. As I understand, hepatitis B is a disease that is transmitted through blood products or sexual intercourse. So I didn't understand how my baby was going to be exposed to that disease. This made me curious and wondered and worried, and I read countless hours and researched outcomes of the Hep B vaccine in infants. There was very little information to be had from the official sources like Health Canada and the CDC, other than the recommendations of strictly adhering to the schedule and that vaccines are safe and effective. I wanted to know about safety. Every time I tried looking for evidence, all studies pointed to efficacy. That is, the effectiveness of the immunization rather than the safety issues and side effects. Actual statistics on the safety of vaccines here in Canada and the U.S. are not collected via rigorous clinical trials and double-blind inert placebos, which most drugs that are released to the public are required to go through. You would think this would be an important step in the approval process before millions of Canadians are expected to succumb to the shots. But instead, the actual vaccine makers collect side effect data that has been reported in the clinical studies that are determining efficacy. So literally, it's just a sideshow to the efficacy study. Apparently, safety testing is not required. Apparently, vaccines are exempt from the safety testing because they are classified as biologics. If anyone can show me a single study that was performed here in Canada regarding vaccine safety, please enlighten me. All I see is references to the assumption that the studies have been performed, but no actual data appears to be available. I decided my child did not require a hepatitis B shot at birth, then again at 2 months, then again at 6 months. 3 shots in the infancy stage for a disease that there is zero risk of contracting in infancy. I then began researching the history of vaccines. I hadn't thought much about it until this point. Much like anyone else, I believe that vaccines were important and saved lives. That's what we have been told since the beginning. Just like we were told that the tobacco is safe, DDT was safe, thalidomide was safe, glyphosate is safe, and all vaccines are safe and effective for all children. Why doesn't the media report on adverse reactions, much less report on any negative news where the pharmaceutical industry is concerned? Why the media blackout on this topic? Why are so many people being ignored when they say their child has been injured by a vaccine? Not doctor verified? Try getting any doctor to admit anything negative about a vaccine. Try getting a doctor to issue a medical exemption. In my specific case, I have no hope of doing any of that because the requirements for medical exemptions say that my child has to have experienced an adverse event in order to even be considered for a medical exemption. So there are the parents all over the world that want to save others from a life of tragedy and disaster, because that's what it is when your kid gets sick with unexplained, prolonged illnesses, and you are told that they are beyond your control, and no one knows where they originated, even though the parents of the child witnessed a change right after the shot. Parents are those people who tend to their baby 24/7 and are able to pick up the slightest oddity in the condition of their child from one day to the next, because that's what we are supposed to do. Stop ignoring the people who care most about their children, parents. We are not just talking about autism, by the way. It is annoying that most people automatically assume you got your information from Andy Wakefield, the discredited doctor who had his license ripped from his hands. How dare he talk bad about vaccines, much like Dina Churchill was portrayed by Mr. Carty. I interpreted a portion of what Mr. Carty said during Monday's session. Basically, he said, I just want to let everyone know that her license was ripped from her, and anything she has to say is completely invalid because of that. He just wanted to make that clear. No one is credible, apparently, except for the pro-vaccine side, even though he doesn't have any medical training. quite frankly, there is such a range of little disasters that can occur in a tiny little body that's trying to grow and become stronger when you intervene and disturb the natural development process by injecting chemicals that are mass manufactured using questionable ingredients. The very same ingredients that you would never feed your child, but it's okay to inject into the soft tissue, bypassing the body's natural defenses. The automatic retort the pro side is thinking of right now is the amounts of these chemicals are so small they have no effect but the intended immune response. The small particles are exactly the problem. Those small particles are more inclined to move through the body via blood and body fluid and can and may cross the blood-brain barrier. What havoc those chemicals cause in the brain and on the way there is anyone's best guess. I choose not to guess. I'm relying on the God-given immune system that has kept us going for all these years. Imagine all the adults running around that aren't vaccinated according to today's recommended schedule. How have they stayed alive all these years? How have I? Does this bill introduce the concept of our body but the government's choice instead of our body, our choice, as Mr. Carty has so uncomfortably advocated for? What does the future hold for us with eroded freedoms if by some disaster this bill gets into action? Are we to assume that adult mandates will be coming soon? Unvaccinated being identified with a band on their arm so that they can be kept out of public places? What about vaccinated children being exposed to the privately educated, potentially non-vaccinated children in the community? I don't think Mr. Carty thought this one through. Notice the increase in the amount of vaccines on the schedule. Do you remember getting all those shots? There are 16 different shots on the New Brunswick schedule from age 0 to 18 months. These 16 shots cover 9 different diseases, 16 jabs by 18 months. Are you not shocked that we are over-injecting our most precious babies when they are most vulnerable? They cannot speak. They cannot communicate with us. We, the parents, are just learning how they behave and what their normal is when they're infants. It makes no sense to do this. Did you know Japan doesn't give any vaccines until the age of 2? Their rate of infant death and adverse reaction drastically declined after changing the age of vaccination. Why are we not paying attention to what other countries do besides the almighty USA? Unfortunately, I did see the documents that were filled out regarding the lobbying efforts of the pharmaceutical companies to the province of New Brunswick, specific government offices, and also the Government of Canada. These visits and discussions were held unbeknownst to the public, of course, since apparently it is none of our business. The timing of these visits just happened to be a couple of weeks before the release of the measles outbreak at the KV High School. Why is the government having closed-door discussions with the pharmaceutical industry? Is this in our best interest? How about the measles outbreak? All reports lean towards the unvaccinated being the problem. I saw it time and time again. The media was definitely scratching Dominic's back. The original outbreak of measles in KV was reported to be started by someone being exposed via travel to Europe. So why wasn't a travel ban put in place? You can't stop people from traveling, but you can force them to get their child injected in order to attend public school. Does this make any sense? As a result of the outbreak, over 15,000 people were vaccinated, some revaccinated, as a lot of children and their families were already up to date with their boosters. Why were we not told whether the measles strain was that of the vaccine or the wild measles strain in those infected? You do know that the MMR vaccine contains 3 live viruses, and they can give you the disease they were intended to prevent, but with fewer symptoms usually. Why were we not told whether those cases had been vaccinated or not? how ridiculous this lack of information is. Just get the shot and never mind the details you don't need to know. 12 people out of a provincial population of 767,000 people as of 2018. Apparently the term outbreak is used when there have been 2 or more confirmed cases. We all know that quarantine is the best way to stop the spread of any disease. It is well documented that the measles part of the MMR jab does not take effect until as much as 2 to 3 weeks. So what was the hurry to get everyone vaccinated at KV High School? How much money did the government generate for the pharmaceutical companies with those more than 15,000 shots? How much momentum did Mr. Carty gain from the manufactured fear generated from this outbreak? Do any of you remember when measles was a rite of passage for most children? Do you know that most of your parents have had the measles and most have had no serious outcomes? Do you know that vitamin A can lessen the symptoms of the disease? I tried to find out when the last person died of measles in Canada but could not find anything. I tried to find out how many people died as a result of the MMR vaccine in Canada, but I found this, which is actually what you just talked about in the last session, the adverse events database. This is the report from July 1st to December 31st of 2018. And if we could get that on the screen, that would be great. So I'm not going to bore you with all the details because it's really long, and I printed it in color so you could see the pie chart, which is the most important part of this document. Now, I don't have the page number, but it shows about 6 pages in, figure 2, reports, oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. The next pie chart, figure 3, primary reason for AEFI reporting, July to December 2018, serious and non-serious. So I'm looking for the pie chart, figure 3, please. I just need to get that page up. So what you'll notice here is that the adverse events have been broken down into percentages, okay? So what they're saying here is 37% at or near the reaction at or near the vaccination site was the 37%. Allergic or allergic-like event was the 18. The rash was 10. The other events is 20. Neurologic 8. Systemic event 7. And 1% for vaccine anxiety. Vaccine error was the primary reason for AEFI reporting in less than 1%, so it's not visible on the graph. So I just want to talk about what is a neurologic event. So there is no definition for a neurologic event, so I looked at the definition of neurology, a branch of medicine dealing with the disorders of the nervous system. So what I can discern from this document, which seems to be cleverly crafted by somebody who does documents of this sort, 8% of the people reported, which was, the total was, after the graph. Okay, so on the next page after that, it shows you a breakdown of the reactions and the percentages as such. So the neurologic event affected a total of 42 people out of 114. That's 37%. That's a pretty high number for somebody who claims that vaccines are safe and effective. But the most shocking part is if you look at the other category in the graph, the purple part. On the bottom it says, other events include gastrointestinal reaction, para-anesthesia, thrombo whatever, hypotonic, hyporesponsive episode, persistent crying, intussusception, arthritis, whatever that word is, parotitis, sudden unexpected death syndrome, and unidentified other. So basically, we have a lumping of sudden unexpected death syndrome in the 20% on the pie chart, and it is indiscernible what number of people actually suffered from sudden unexpected death syndrome. It's, like I said, cleverly crafted to hide the data that we as people, parents, concerned about vaccines need to know. I don't know why this is going on, but it's widespread all over the place. Just in case you don't know, sudden unexpected death syndrome, that's what it is. And it doesn't just pertain to babies in this document, although every other document I've read on sudden unexpected infant death syndrome, but Canada apparently does not differentiate between adults and babies in this regard. Here's the thought. Do a study. One that compares health outcomes of children that are completely unvaccinated versus vaccinated. Your reliance on the age-old mantra, vaccines are safe and effective, can then finally be put to the test. And we can be silenced once and for all. I know everybody would love that if we would just shut up. I would love it too if I could shut up about this issue. Why does the pharmaceutical industry refuse to do the study? Why does Health Canada refuse? It is really your job, given that you're even considering a mandate, to prove to the greater public that vaccines are safe and effective. It is not the public's job to prove to you that they are not. It's a product sold for profit. With so much so-called misinformation being spread via social media, as per Mr. Carty, why wouldn't the government jump at the chance to prove us all wrong? Does Canada rely on the biased data from the pharmaceutical industry? Why is the pharma industry permitted to perform and report their own testing on their own product? In what other industry does this happen? How well does the fox guard the henhouse? You cannot sue the pharmaceutical industry in the U.S. or Canada. The government passed legislation to protect the pharmaceutical companies from liability in the 1980s. Now, I have heard about your annoyance in the past 2 days with the references to the U.S. and the comparisons to our two systems of vaccination. It seems you think we are separate entities with separate rules that are determined by our health authority here in Canada. I can assure you we are just piggybacking policy that is created in the U.S. and, more importantly, the World Health Organization's policies for the planet. In case you have forgotten, mostly all pharmaceutical companies are multinational enterprises, and their reach, influence, and lobby money is unsurpassed by any other industry here in North America. Now, Mr. Carty has been busy bullying and name-calling anyone that dared question the bill via social media for the past few weeks. He has said things like, and I know you've heard this already, just a couple examples, yet another falsehood from the Nut Patrol. Anti-vaxxers deserve shaming and censure. I've previously described anti-vaxxers as child abusers. Mr. Carty likes to refer to us non-scientist types as graduated from Google University. Yet he tells people to use Google to look up the information he says confirms his position on the vaccine regime, a term he has used indiscriminately. What does regime mean? A government, especially an oppressive or undemocratic one, or a usually heavy-handed administration or group in charge of an organization. Vaccine regime is an excellent term. I just didn't expect to hear it coming out of Mr. Carty's mouth. Hate speech and lynch mob justice is all I see and hear whenever the topic of vaccinating is questioned. How is this being tolerated? In this age of the expected total acceptance of every human, no matter their race, religion, ethnic background, sexual preference, etc., how is this level of bad behavior tolerated in our legislature? Is the science settled? Even though I am not a scientist type, I can still understand that the very nature of science is that it is never settled. Scientists are constantly trying to disprove their theories and hypotheses. That is how science is advanced. That is how we learn that our prior thinking may have been wrong, as new evidence suggests. But there is no new evidence when it comes to the vaccine science. All of the science is 30 years old already. When was the last safety study done on any vaccine? Did you know that Health and Human Services in the U.S. are being sued by Robert Kennedy as we speak because they did not fulfill the terms of their agreement to monitor the safety of vaccines? I heard just yesterday that Mr. Kennedy won the lawsuit. Health and Human Services could not produce any vaccine data for the last 30 years. Now, how is this bill going to affect me? I can tell you I will never vaccinate my child. If this bill passes, it could very well land me in the poorhouse. I'm a single mom. All these years since my child was born, I have been working hard to make a life for us. Will I be able to pay for a mortgage if I homeschool? Will I be able to eat if I send my child to private school? These are very important socioeconomic questions. These factors have not been addressed at all. How will this bill affect people's perception of life in New Brunswick? I just got a sponsored ad from the government of New Brunswick just the other day, which reads, quote, "Why does NB need a population growth strategy? We are facing population decline that will impact our economy and workforce. We need to reverse the population trends in our province to help us meet the needs of New Brunswick employers to help grow our economy. This week, we will launch a renewed population growth strategy with a focus on growing the population, enhancing our immigration efforts, and building welcoming communities across the province." I don't know about you, but mandatory vaccination does not sound like a way to grow population in New Brunswick, much less keep current residents here. In fact, Dr. Bob Sears mentioned on Tuesday the Californian workforce declined by some 28,000 people since California introduced a bill to take away vaccine exemptions, just like Mr. Carty is trying to do now. Surely you cannot think that the only people who have spoken to the committee are in disagreement with the bill. I mean, there's lots of others. There are a lot of people who take the Charter of Rights very seriously and will not subject it to it being directly violated where the provincial government is concerned. There are a lot of people who see vaccines as dangerous, just like I do, but are afraid to speak. Why wouldn't they be fearful when you see how an elected official like Mr. Carty is permitted to treat people, let alone the rest of society, who is convinced that vaccines are safe and effective, even though they have not committed one single hour to researching the subject? Instead of mandating injections, mandate informed consent, which includes full disclosure and pre-reading of the product monograph prior to scheduling the jab appointment. In case you don't know, this is a copy of a product monograph that is 42 pages long, one-sided. This has never been shown to anybody I've ever talked to about vaccines. Nobody sees it. It's not, when you go to the doctor, they give you a fact sheet and they tell you the common symptoms or problems and they set you off. You need to look at that. There's all kinds of information in there you need to see. Another thing I brought, I didn't have enough monetary allowances to allow me to make copies for everybody, but I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that this so-called anti-vaccine issue is not new. This particular article is dated 1913. Okay? So I invite you, if anybody is interested in this, please look. It's available online. I plan on sending you guys the links to all of what I've discussed here today and any of the documents. And finally, I come to this: infant mortality rates regressed against number of vaccine doses routinely given. Is there a biochemical or synergistic toxicity? And I won't go into details. You have the document, you can read. It's a very interesting read. But basically what it's showing is showing the top 34 countries in infant mortality rates. Then it shows the same top 34 countries and the amount of vaccine doses. Now, these numbers directly line up with one another, as you can see on the third or fourth page. The charts, somebody's crunched the numbers, made the charts. The level of the level of infant mortality is directly related to the amount of vaccines on the country schedule. It's all in here. Just have a look at it. It's intriguing. Please do. In closing, I'm going to tell you that it is our basic fundamental right to informed consent. If you are not informed of all the risks versus benefits, then you are not informed and you cannot consent. Where there is risk, there must be choice. My family, my choice. Shame on Mr. Carty. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have used the entire time, and I do not see that there are times. We actually slightly exceeded the time.
I exceeded the time?
Well, according to we've
I start at 1:45, so what time is it now?
I had you starting at 1:44.
Okay.
And it's 2:14.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I'd love to answer some.
30 minutes included the time for questioning.
No questions. Excellent. Thank you very much.